Alright, so I just spent about 10 hours with Romeo Is Dead Man, the new game from Grasshopper Manufacture and Suda51. I need to be really clear right up front. This game is exactly what you think it is, and also absolutely not what you think it is. If you played No More Heroes, Killer 7, or basically anything Suda51 has touched, you already know you're not getting a normal action game. You're getting a loud, messy, stylish, and sometimes brilliant fever dream that occasionally forgets it's supposed to be a video game. After 10 hours, which is most of a full playthrough, I've got some sort of thoughts. Some of them really positive, some of them extremely not. And let's talk about it. You play as Romeo Stargazer, a sheriff's deputy who dies or half dies, and gets turned into this cyborg time-travelling agent hunting criminals across space-time, while searching for his missing girlfriend Juliet. Yes, it's called Romeo Is Dead Man. Yes, Juliet is involved. No, this is not Shakespeare. The story is basically a sci-fi cop drama, or multiverse chaos, with a bit of romance melodrama thrown in, and zombie co-workers, with some conspiracy nonsense, and some anime logic. It throws a lot at you immediately. The game opens like it expects you to already understand what's happening, and then just keeps escalating this weirdness without slowing down to explain anything. And here's the thing, that's intentional. Suda51 games are less about coherent storytelling, and more about vibes, symbolism, and surreal character moments. And in that sense, the game absolutely delivers. There are some genuinely memorable scenes. Conversations on your spaceship hub, bizarre villains who feel like they wandered in from different genres, multiple versions of Juliet showing up in ways that are confusing but also intriguing, and little character bits that are funny, awkward, and oddly sweet. However, if you're looking for a strong emotional arc or a story that builds towards something meaningful, you're probably not going to get that. It feels like a collection of really cool ideas, rather than a fully constructed narrative. You're definitely entertained. You're definitely curious, but you're not necessarily invested in it. So let's talk about some of the core gameplay, because this is where the game can both shine and stumble. Combat's third person, and it's hack and slash with guns mixed in. You're constantly switching between sword attacks and shooting, mowing through waves of grotesque enemies, and at first, it feels fantastic. Hits are chunky, animations are stylish, blood and effects are flying everywhere, literally, with enemies exploding in satisfying ways, and you feel powerful immediately. It's very kind of turn your brain off and just go wild feel to it. The boss fights are awesome. They're creative, visually they're wild, and often introduce unique mechanics that make them feel like actual set pieces rather than just bigger enemies. And some of them are actually genuinely memorable. But once the initial excitement wears off, that's where the problems start to creep in. Regular combat encounters do get repetitive. A lot of fights turn into button mashing against large groups of enemies that don't require much strategy at all. There is enemy variety, it does exist, but it doesn't dramatically change how you play. And there's also a weird difficulty curve. Normal enemies are usually easy, bosses occasionally brutal. Skill expression is just somewhat limited. And if you're coming from games like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, expecting deep combat systems that you can master, this isn't that. It's much more about spectacle than it is about precision. Now, one area that did get me hooked more than others was the upgrade systems. And this is where you can earn currency from missions, spend on new weapons and upgrades, and it's pretty standard fare. But the game also has this bizarre Pac-Man style maze minigame that you use to upgrade Romeo himself. And somehow that works. It's weirdly addictive, and you keep thinking just one more upgrade throughout. Suddenly you've spent way too long optimizing stats instead of progressing the story. And there's also a system that involves zombie allies that you grow on your spaceship. Yes, really. They can provide special abilities during missions, and it adds a little bit of tactical flavour, even if it never becomes super deep. Because the game jumps across timelines and dimensions, levels are constantly changing style. And you can go from a sci-fi facility to something that looks much more like a horror game, then a stylized comic book world, and then something that feels more retro. And that unpredictability does keep things interesting. You never quite know what that next mission's going to look like. That's also a downside, because levels can be confusing. Layouts are often maze-like, and sometimes it's not clear what you're supposed to do, or where you're supposed to go. Backtracking happens way more than it should, and that can kind of kill the momentum. Visually, environments are consistent, but some areas look striking and artistic, whilst others look weirdly flat and under-detailed. Like they don't belong there, maybe belong more on older generation or hardware. So again, some really cool ideas, but an uneven execution. Between missions, you return to a spaceship that acts as your home base, and honestly, this could actually be my favourite part of the game. You get to walk around, talk to crew members, and cook with your mum. Yes, your mum is there. You get to take quizzes, play minigames, manage your upgrades, and just soak in the atmosphere. It does give the game a personality, and it slows things down in a really good way. But the problem is that most of these activities feel underdeveloped. They're really cool, fun distractions, but not deep systems that you're going to spend hours mastering. It's a charming space, and that makes the world feel more alive. But if there's one thing that this game absolutely nails, it's identity. Romeo Is a Dead Man looks like absolutely nothing else. The presentation is constantly shifting, with anime cutscenes, comic panels, pixel art moments, stylized 3D action, and surreal visual gags. It feels like the game's reinventing itself literally every half an hour. And sometimes that's amazing, sometimes it's disorienting, but it's never boring. And I always had a smile on my face through my playthrough. Enemy designs are especially grotesque and memorable, and the over-the-top gore effects make combat feel more impactful than it actually is mechanically. It's not a game chasing realism, it's a game chasing style. And the soundtrack adds to that. It's fantastic. It jumps between genres just like everything else does in the game, and it almost always enhances the mood. Combat tracks pump you up, quieter moments feel a bit more eerie, melancholic, and the boss themes do go hard. Sound design is strong as well, with weapons feeling powerful, enemies sounding disgusting in all the right ways, and the voice acting leans into the campiness without becoming unbearable. Now we do have to talk about the technical side. This game is a little janky. Not unplayable janky, but it's definitely rough around the edges. During my playthrough I did run into some frame drops during some of the chaotic fights, some minor visual glitches, occasional audio hiccups, and a general lack of maybe polish. Nothing that's completely broke the experience, but it does remind you that this isn't a big AAA production. Hopefully some of these will get sorted with after sale patch down the line, but at the moment it just feels a little bit scrappy, sometimes charmingly so, but sometimes also frustratingly. So, the good for Romeo Is a Dead Man: unique, unmistakable style without a shadow of a doubt, some really memorable bosses, some fun, flashy combat, even if it's not super deep, some addictive upgrade systems that are really fun to go through, an excellent soundtrack throughout, some constant surprises and changes to the visual style and identity, and a really strong personality that is what you would expect from a Grasshopper Manufacture game and Suda51. Some of the not so good, well, a little bit of a shallow combat depth, confusing story, some repetitive regular encounters and inconsistent level design, a little tiny bit of technical jank, and maybe a weak emotional payoff as well. So, my final thoughts. Romeo Is a Dead Man is going to be a really polarising game. Probably what you'd expect from a Suda51. It's weird, has style, and it's unpredictable. And if you like that, you're probably going to have an amazing time with the game. But if you want tight mechanics, really clear storytelling, and polished production values, this game probably not it. It feels less like a blockbuster and more like a punk art project disguised as an action title. It's messy, it's fascinating, occasionally brilliant, whilst occasionally frustrating, but it's never generic. And honestly, in a world full of safe, formulaic games, there's something really refreshing about that. If you enjoyed this review, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Feel free to leave your comments below. I'd love to hear from you as to how you enjoyed the game or didn't. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.